California Governor Gavin Newsom has just signed a couple of bills that are going to turn California gun owners into some of the most charitable people ever. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And gentlemen, the governor has decided to essentially double the tax on guns and ammo. And so there was already a federal tax of in the neighborhood of 10 to 11%. And now California is going to add another 11%. And they're going to use that money for school security programs and gun violence prevention programs, especially among gang members or addressed toward gang members. And so now, Stephen Green, if you're as a California resident, when you're buying a gun or buying some ammo, you can know that you're making not only an investment in good times for you at the shooting range, but also you're helping our schools to become more safe. You're helping reduce gang violence.
Well,
shouldn't that increase gun sales in California?
Sales just over the border in Nevada. That's where I'd be going for my ammo. That's for sure. Not that I require any ammo for the guns I no longer own. That said, what's curious here, this is such a great example of how the left in America perpetuates itself, despite having some views that, when put in practice, are not very popular, as we've seen lately. And that is, this money is going to education programs. Now, you're not going to have some government employee teaching gangs or school kids about gun safety. No. Progressive organizations will step up and, through the goodness of their hearts, accept this government money that was paid for by gun owners to teach the next generation guns are bad, okay? And with this money, not all of it, of course, will go to the educators. Most of that money will go to the organization that will then perpetuate itself on taxpayer dollars, and not just any taxpayer dollars, but taxes paid by gun owners. This is such a blatant example of grift. There's no other word for it. It's exactly what it is, and we've reached a level of corruption in this country where this isn't frowned upon. This is celebrated. Oh, we're teaching people about gun safety through taxes paid for by gun owners, and the money goes to these private organizations. That's just terrific. No, it isn't. It's not terrific. It's grift. It's graft. It's corruption. It's being on the take and feeding at the public trough and doing so. Getting gun owners to pay for these anti-gun programs is really no different than, say, taxing TV stations, well, back when we still had TV stations, streaming news streamers to finance anti-free speech programs. No different at all.
You know, I feel like you give me a great idea. I want to move to California and start an organization, a foundation called the School Safety and Voter Registration Foundation. And so we can get some of this government largesse and we can use it to register new voters, because essentially that's what you're saying they do. I mean, the purpose of these organizations is not just to do the good in the community, but it's to be the outreach arm for voter registration for the Democratic Party. And you hit the nail on the head there. Bill Whittle, it's not as if it's unprecedented to use taxes on guns to fund other things. And in fact, the federal tax actually pays for wildlife conservation and hunter education. So why not take advantage of this? I mean, back in the day, you know, they were saying, hey, we should tax cigarettes more so we can pay for, you know, healthcare and medical research and, you know, defeating cancer. So why not say, okay, you know, people want to buy guns. This is kind of a luxury item. You don't have to buy the gun. Why not take some of that money and do some good with it?
Well, the first question I would have is, what does some 23-year-old green-haired Berkeley graduate have to tell a hunter about wildlife conservation. So there's that. Yesterday I did, I think maybe the third time in my life, an actual tweet, or an X or whatever it's called now.
You X'd?
Yeah, I usually link them to, Facebook posts and stuff, but this is one of the 3 times I felt like I just needed to say something. And basically what I said was all you need to know about about Gavin Newsom's California and California politics is that the next senator from California has already fled California and lives in Maryland. What do you say about this, gang education? So somebody's going to get a bunch of gang members together at an American Union Hall, or a Foreign Legion Hall, or maybe in a church rec center or something, and then come in with a PowerPoint demonstration talking about why killing people is bad and you really shouldn't do this, and this is sold as if it's realistic, that they actually have the audacity to say that we're going to use this to educate gang members about gun violence. That's how thin the cover is now, that you can actually get away with something like that. I'd really feel much better if they just said, we're just going to keep the money. And then at least, I would be stolen from, but I wouldn't be lied to about it. Gavin Newsom has his policies have turned what was once the most beautiful city in America into a shut-down garbage dump filled with used hypodermic needles and human refuse. And that's what he's doing to the entire state. And it's good that he's doing it to the entire state. The entire country needs to see what happens when you have one-party rule from the most lunatic people in the world. The only thing that's going to save America is the utter collapse of California before everybody else's eyes. The state's no longer an embarrassment or a joke. It's not even a laughing stock. It's a curiosity. It's something you might find in Ripley's Believe It or Not. It's a four-headed chicken is what it is. It's a freak of nature. It's what happens when cosmic rays strike DNA. It is no longer even lampoonable. You can't write about this stuff even in a comic or ironic way anymore. It's beyond belief, and so I don't really know what to say about it. We're going to take this money and have education outreach programs for gang members because apparently they're not aware of the fact that running around and killing people is wrong. And all we need to do is throw a little more money at it and the problem will go away. We did a show last week. I did a show last week about the students in Baltimore, 11.4% of whom are proficient in math. That's the tragedy. The cruelty is that the person responsible for their education is taking home $445,000 a year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what government is now. That's at least what progressive government is now. It is a racket that is so. It's insulting. It's insulting. It's just insulting to come up with an excuse like that. That this is what we need the money for gang education. I'd rather they just took it and said, I'm going to spend it on a yacht. I'd really much rather have that.
Well, there are two elements to this. You could make the argument if you're trying to explain what the governor and his colleagues in the legislature are trying to do. Number one is by taxing something that you'll suppress the sales of it. But anybody who understands anything about how this process works, for example, when they increase the taxes on cigarettes, almost nobody quits smoking because of the cost. People like cigarettes. and in many cases, people were addicted to cigarettes. So it didn't suppress sales, and they said they would use the money for nice things, and that really nobody cared. In this case, if you think you're going to reduce the purchase of guns or ammunition by increasing the price on them, it just won't happen for two reasons. Number one is people will quickly just factor that in. They're like, okay, well, that's what, just guns and ammo cost 11% more now, and that's just the way, that's the going rate. And the other thing is that it will actually drive the purchase of more guns and ammo, because people will think, if they're trying to tax us into stopping this now, imagine when that doesn't work, and then they'll just try to take our guns. So we need to stock up early while we can. And so it'll have the exact reverse effect. Then the other part of it, to say the funding is going to go to increase school safety and to reduce gun violence, especially among gang members, for example, what that implies is we know how to do this. In other words, we know how to increase school security. We know how to reduce gun violence. And the only reason why we haven't done it up till now is because we didn't have that extra 11% tax revenue coming in from the gun sales. Otherwise, we would have been doing it for years and getting these people, out of their gangs and making our schools more safe. So the truth of the matter is they don't know how to do it. They will do what Steve suggested, which is they'll just give grants to community organizations who will then serve as an arm, basically, of the party. None of this can work at any level. It's going to be, if it hasn't already, as I'm speaking these words, be challenged as unconstitutional. I mean, when the Constitution says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, I would say that jacking up taxes is a form of infringement. It is an encroachment upon my rights when you try to make things more expensive. If in California they suddenly said, hey, we're going to jack up taxes on abortions, don't you think abortion advocates would say, wait a minute, you're infringing on my right to get an abortion? Yes, they would. And that would be true in that case as well. And so I don't think this is going to pass constitutional muster. Certainly, I mean, it may get through a California circuit court, but it's not going to get through the U.S. Supreme Court, at least not within the next couple of years, as it is currently constituted. So it just, the difference between the way Gavin Newsom and his buddies view guns and ammunition and the way normal Americans do is so stark. But the problem is that there are a handful of elite people who have no appreciation for what firearms mean, not only in a constitutional sense, but in a recreational sense, in a self-defense sense, in a cultural sense as being part of a family's experience. And I'll give you one illustration of this. I had a customer who came into our store the other day and wanted to know where the hard surface flooring department was. And so I'm walking her back there, and I said, oh, tell me about your situation. She said, well, I need to get some vinyl flooring, and it's got to be interlocking. And she's telling me all about this stuff. And I said, oh, what room in the house is it for? And she said, it's for the loading room. And I said, I'm sorry, for the what? She said, for the loading room. And I said, I don't have one of those. What is a loading room? She goes, well, that's where they load the ammunition. And I said, oh, they make their own rounds, basically. Yes, they do. And it flowed out of her so naturally, it's the loading room. And it was because for her, that's like a normal part of life. It's not a scary thing. It's not something that people.
Cool.
Yeah, but they have this special room where they do that. And until, there are lots of people in California who have that kind of mindset too about firearms. They appreciate the dangers. They keep them safe. They keep them well-maintained. They keep themselves well-maintained in their skills. They understand the constitutional relevance of the right to keep and bear arms. Some of them are hunters. Some of them are recreational shooters. Some of them are self-defense people. But all of them have a right to do this. And these two laws are going to fall, I predict, before the U.S. Supreme Court. But it's a shame that we have to waste so much time and money just to educate a numbskull like Gavin Newsom. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.